welcome to the Saint-Amboise Montreal Fringe Festival. Our festival takes place on the unceded territory of the Ganégaga. Tiohtià:ke, or Montreal, is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations, including the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Huron-Wendat, Abenaki, and Anishinaabe.
Oh, Jesus Christ, we gotta get started. All right, welcome to youth group. It's good to see all of you. The lights are so freaking loud. Okay, whatever. Youth group. No offense, some of you are looking a little haggard. Vegetables, sunscreen. Stuff's important. All right, youth group rules. Get it? It's a pun. You're welcome. Simple ground rules for tonight. Number one, you're allowed to swear. Jesus actually didn't care about vocabulary, he cared about how you use it. So if you say golly darn you to somebody else, that's not okay, but if you look at the state of injustice in the world and you feel moved to say fuck that shit, that's totally fine, that's allowed. I do ask, you don't have to listen to me, but please don't distract one another. Also, no making out. It's not a moral problem if you make out with each other, it's just a responsibility issue. I don't want to know. Because your parents ask who's hooking up with who, and I need plausible deniability. Help me, help you, you know what I mean? So, fall in love at youth group, make out later. Fair enough. Okay. So just, in summary, don't make out with one another, fuck injustice, and love one another, but only in ways that do not involve making out with one another here, right now. Later, as I said, it's fine. All right, so who the heavens am I? I'm the Reverend Jean-Daniel O'Donoghue, or just Pastor Jean-Daniel, never father. I understand in a majority Catholic area, you see this black shirt and the white collar, and you think, well, that's a Roman Catholic priest. Well, no. Because fun fact, Presbyterians, not Roman Catholics, invented this look. Roman Catholics dress like this, copying us. And I don't mind Roman Catholic priests dressing like me. I just don't like people acting like I'm the one faking being Catholic when they're copying our sexy look. So, and I know some of you are like, but I've never seen a Protestant pastor in a black shirt and white collar. Yes, you have. You just assumed he was Roman Catholic. Or when it's my female colleagues, a nun, which doesn't quite work out correctly. More important fact, Jesus actually dressed differently. Jesus didn't dress like this, so it's not the most important thing Catholics and Protestants disagree about. Here's the thing, we make wrong assumptions about one another all the time. You see somebody dressed like this, you think Roman Catholic priest. I'm walking around the gay village of Montreal, people were like, what's that homophobe doing here? Celebrating a lesbian wedding. Because statistically, that's the only group in Montreal that knows how to commit. I would do straight and gay weddings, they just never ask. And I know, some of you are like, I don't make wrong assumptions. Like, I'm like a total empath, and I can just read people. You're overestimating yourself, you're toxic as fuck, and repent. Now, I understand here in Montreal, some of you have the question, why do I talk like this? This is not technically a speech impediment. Millions of people talk like me. I'm from Boston. This is how I learned how to speak English, like this. And contrary to all the Affleck brother movies, this accent isn't just for gangsta shit. You can go through normal life with this accent. You can even say things like, the peace of the Lord Jesus Christ always be with you, in this accent. According to my research, there's only one sentence that can't be said in a Boston accent, and it is, I'm so proud of you, son. Nobody's ever been able to pronounce that in a Boston accent. So how is it that a guy with a Boston accent, his name's Jean-Daniel, fair enough. Immigration. My ethnically French-Canadian family immigrated to Boston, so I grew up speaking French at home, but English out in the streets like this. So how did I end up living in Montreal? Well, also, immigration. And I came here during the Obama and Hoppe years, so you know it was about language and culture. But my God, what a true prophet I was. Now, as far as the O'Donoghue part, that's not very French. You see, kids, sometimes on a beautiful evening on Cape Cod after the lobster bake, somebody French-Canadian and somebody Irish look at each other in the eyes longingly and and think about how much they literally fucking hate the English. And 9 months later, a French vanilla Irish cream swirl of skin cancer risk enters into the world. Because here's the thing. I'm French Canadian and Bostonian, American and Canadian, in a clergy collar, but Protestant. Because, fun fact, people can be more than one thing. And if you understand that, you're welcome to leave right now. That is the entire point, no spoilers. People can be more than one thing. And sometimes we get something right about somebody, but then we imagine all these other things about them because we know one fact. And then we get annoyed at them for not living up to the stereotype of what we decided they had to be based on the one fact we knew about them. Now I want to introduce the pure, fluffy bit of goodness beside me. This is Bertha Marilla Blythe Ford, Rilla for short. Much like Act 2 Angelica Skyla, she's not here for you. She's here for me. She does hearing assistance and medical alert. If she deigns to go near you, you are allowed to pet her, but that is entirely up to her. I am going to give her over to a dog sitter in the third row in just a moment. But if you get distracted and you decide you'd rather look at Rilla than me, that makes sense. She's gorgeous. You have a soul. Natural, logical. It's just important to me that you understand that if you're imagining her interior monologue, you know that Rilla has a thick maritime Canadian accent and a heavy lisp. So if you're picturing her talking, it's something like, "Oh, hey there, guys, it's your nice thumb to see ya. How you doing there? Okay, who's a good girl? Yes, me, yes, me." If you're picturing that voice, you're allowed to look at Rilla instead of listening to me. Because I'm a little bit letting her off duty of medical alert stuff, at no point am I planning on falling over and violently shaking. If that happens, call 911. Because she's not going to be paying attention to me. So my dog sitters, Rilla, you want Rilla on your back? So, okay. There you go. All right. Let's get started. We're here for Bible study, so let's get going. Excuse me a moment. Okay, I forgot my Bible. Okay. So actually, Speedo is a brand name. They're more properly called swim briefs, and it's because it's summer and it's hot. And Tylenol because all of you, dog treats because of Rilla, and yeah, those are condoms. New lesson plan, okay? Just new plan. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Clergy are humans. Just humans, not magical beings. Did you know Jesus got hangry? He got hangry at a fig tree. He loved taking naps. Jesus loved napping. The Bible is totally clear on this. He doubted God. He wept. He gave his best friends nicknames like Rocky and the Thunder Boys. Saint Peter? No, that's just Rocky. His name's Simon. And James and John, the Sons of Thunder, the Thunder Boys. Jesus is a 33-year-old dude. So I don't know where people got the idea that following Jesus means having no humanity, no humor, no personality, no flaws. And listen, there's no scandal that I'm carrying around condoms, because, fun fact for you, Protestant clergy are allowed to have sex. And we have been since 1517. This isn't even radical new liberal stuff. I'm allowed to find love. Capable is another question, but I'm allowed. And look, any religion that pretends humans aren't humans is just bullshit. Look, and by the way, there are facts more important than my really awkward youth pastor has a sex life or is potentially allowed to have a sex life. For example, fun fact, we're all going to die. Did you know that? You're going to die, everybody gets to die. I was a hospital chaplain for a while, and I go into people's rooms and they say, Father, because they assume wrongly, am I going to die? And when I was new at being a hospital chaplain, I was like, oh, I don't know. About 2 days into the job, I realized this is the easiest question I could possibly be asked. Yeah, I mean, you have to ask your physician about the timeline and statistics, but the inevitability, oh yeah, you're all going to die. Easy question. But you know, I learned that the hospital is a more important question. So now what? Because there's a related fun fact. You're not dead yet. So if any of you are wondering, like, could I possibly still be called to live a life of love and make the world better? Yeah. Do you know how I know? You're not dead. That's what's important. Jesus prayed that the reign of God comes on earth as it is in heaven. And Christianity, so many people are obsessed with what comes next. God takes care of what's next. This reminds me of one of my favorite hymns from my childhood. Ooh, baby, you know what it's worth. You make heaven a place on earth. That's what you're supposed to be doing right now. Don't obsess with, am I going to go to heaven later? Make heaven now. That's it. That's all you got to do is just love one another. Not making love. Most people, the most loving thing you can do is not make love to them. It is a very small minority of people in your life that you are called to make love to. But you are called to love everybody. But since you bring it up, the overwhelming majority of us exist because our parents, that's right, your mom and your dad, had sex with one another. Now, modern science means that there are a few more exceptions in recent decades, and there's one very important exception to me around the year 4 BCE. But generally, you exist, 4 years before Christ. Theologians and mathematicians are different professions. Yeah, so your parents know what sex is. And biology's not fair. Listen, and this might make you really uncomfortable, but if you are young enough and healthy enough, and your parents are young enough and healthy enough and still love each other, if your parents are still together, still having sex, you are statistically likely to have a healthier, more stable, more financially secure life than people who can't say that. So instead of thinking, ew, gross, my parents are doing it, put on some headphones and praise the Lord. And listen, when I was your age, I didn't have a healthy view of human sexuality. I grew up in a very different kind of church. I grew up in a church with a lot of rules, with old men in Utah telling me rules about my underwear, who I can love and how to love. And they treated romantic love like a flow chart of if you do this legal step, you may do this physical thing. Where it came down to like, did I do the appropriate paperwork to touch your boob yet? No? Okay. But the message I got was loud and clear. Very simple ethic of human sexuality. If it feels good, repent. If it feels good, repent. Orgasm before marriage, repent. Orgasm in marriage, possibly still repent. I want to propose an alternative ethic for y'all. If it is good, thanks be to God. Now this may sound like total crazed hedonism. It depends on what you understand the word good to be. If it is good, mutual, safe, healthy, respectful, if it is good, and not like, you know, those internet clips of people screaming, oh God, oh God. No, oh, thank God. You see, a lot of people think that the Bible clearly prohibits a whole list of certain behaviors. I got too much student loan debt for the Greek language to let you believe that shit. No premarital sex, no homosexuality. That's an interpretive choice. That is a translator's decision. What St. Paul says, don't commit porneia. Porneia. Do not commit porneia. You can imagine some words that we've derived from porneia. Don't commit it. I'd like to offer you a simple translation for porneia, because I am absolutely fundamentalist about this, and I believe St. Paul. Don't be gross. Don't be gross. And some translators decided being gay is kind of gross. Some translators decided premarital sex is kind of gross. I think rape culture is gross. I think homophobia is gross. I think claiming to be straight while obsessing over the gay sex lives of others is pretty gross. I think telling 12-year-old girls at church camps that their midriffs are too tempting in a two-piece bathing suit is gross. But I believe St. Paul. Don't be gross. Look, I don't care if your parents find out they have condoms on me, because fun fact, they had sex with one another. They know what sex is. My real sin is that I waste single-use plastics. Did you know that condoms expire? Did you know you can optimistically overestimate how many people will want to make love to you in the next 3 years by an entire 12-pack of condoms? Look, there's an odd alliance between the old men in Utah who told me no necking, petting, or self-abuse, even though I didn't know what they were talking about. It turns out self-abuse, terribly misnamed. And all of my pansexual polyamorous friends in Montreal. The odd alliance is that both of them believe that life is constantly being offered sex. They're just going to go through life, and everybody's going to be like, please, sleep with me. Now, some of them say, when people are constantly offering sex, you must say no. And some people are saying, don't be a prude and say yes. Here's the thing. A lot of you are going to discover, much as I have, we are so resistible. Like, a lot of us are just very resistible. We're not going to have that problem. We're not going to go through life with people being like, I am your temptress. I was chaplain at McGill University for 10 years, and you know about half of McGill students have no sex life whatsoever? And it's not the ugly ones, by the way. Horrible people hook up with each other all the time. And sometimes celibacy is enforced by having what I call standards. It's not always a bad thing, but still a lonely thing. A surprising thing when you're told that life is constant sexual temptation, and you're like, not a problem. When I was a young little Mormon and my bishop was interviewing me, being like, are you committing sexual sins? I was the only man in my life who believed in my social skills. Wasn't a problem. Look, if you're not a disgusting creep, you're okay with having seasons of no romance in your life. But, and I'm self-aware. I have the kind of face that makes the gorgeous women in my life want to confide in me about their stupid situationships with better-looking men. Also, by the way, your single friends don't need your reassurance of how hypothetically attractive they will be to somebody else someday. Okay? We do not need someone will think you are hot someday. Shut up. If you happen to think, I think you are hot and I want you now, please communicate it directly. Otherwise, shh, 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 shh. I wondered, and I think some of you have wondered this about yourselves, what the hell is wrong with me? Or as my childhood neighborhood kids asked, this is late 1980s Boston, why are you so wicked queer? Why are you so wicked queer? Boston's my native accent, and I didn't realize till I was about 25 that queer is theoretically the same word as queer. Because it was just used differently in Boston. There was a base layer of homophobia, but it was a broader term for like, why do you talk funny? Why do you walk funny? Why do you like musical theater instead of sports? Why are all of your friends girls? That's super gay. Incidentally, that's not very logical. Also, I knew French. And this is hard to explain to people in Quebec, but in Boston, knowing French is gay. Go to a Bruins game, speak to one another in French, you'll get called gay real fast. I mean, the follow-up question is, dude, why can't I just be normal? And I've wondered that. Why can't I just be normal? But I have a counterpoint. Why would you want to be normal? Have you met normal people? Oh. Awful. Normal people like sign up to work for ICE because it has a pension plan. Normal people elect an orange man president twice. Normal people have a hobby of driving giant trucks into downtown Ottawa and honking the horns for 3 months. Why the hell would you want to be? Normal people look at the injustices of the world and go, yeah, that's how it is. It's the weird people who say things could be different. Things don't have to be like this. It is weird to look at the state of the world and imagine something different. We need the wicked queer weirdos. Now, I come by my weirdness honestly. I was scanning all these childhood photos and I realized I've gotten taller, but there's been no emotional growth since any of these photos. I am 4 years old in this picture. What 4-year-old poses like this? This guy just got tenure as a professor. 4 years old. Always been off. It's different. Something clicked with me when I was working as a pediatric hospital chaplain. I became known as the guy who could get teenagers to talk about their feelings, which nobody else on the staff could do. I could get teenagers to talk about their feelings. And what I discovered was that my nurse colleagues, my social worker colleagues, my physician colleagues, they'd walk in with a checklist and just say, how's your foot today? And I'd walk in, I'd see a girl fighting cancer who's on the chart, it says she's nonverbal. It says she can't speak at all. But her room is covered in paintings of horses. And I just stopped making fun of the horses. What the hell's wrong with this one? Why is his butt blue? Why does that one have a bigger leg than the rest? And then she actually spoke and she said, do you think you can paint a better horse? I cannot. But I would talk to her about horses for 45 minutes. And 45 minutes in, she'd say, I really am too scared to do another round of chemo. I kept having this happen over and over again. That kids who were charted as autistic and nonverbal and uncooperative would cooperate with me, would talk to me. And my colleagues thought I was fucking magic. And I kind of thought, well, I'm just an empathetic hero. But the chief of pediatric psychology, she had a different theory. She said, Jean-Daniel, I like you and I appreciate you, but I think there's another word to describe what's going on here. Autistic kids made sense to me with frankly no effort whatsoever. I understood that they thought the lights were too loud, not too bright, too loud. I understood that. I understood that the hospital gown was basically made out of sandpaper and just let them wear something fuzzy. I understood things that other people were like, how? How did you perceive that? And I thought, how did you not? So let's zoom in. I'm the youngest of 5 children, but most of the photos of me from childhood, my siblings are nowhere near me. I am standing away from the group, trying to block out the world, covering my ears, covering my eyes, buried underneath an animal. This is the joy of a little boy who doesn't have to listen to his frickin' brothers. This is most photos of me. Now, I understand some hesitancy. Some people are like, but you don't seem autistic. I promise you, anybody who's ever gone on a date with me is completely convinced I'm autistic. But for those of you who are still doubting, the real question is, but what do you think about trains, Jean-Daniel? So in my home city of Boston, we have a color-coded map of our metro system. It's called the T. The map is color-coded. Beautiful, sublime. But that's not unusual. The thing is, in Boston, if you hop onto, for example, a green line train is in fact green. Hop onto a red line train, it is in fact red. Every train in Boston is the color of the line it is on. Do you understand the sublime perfection and beauty of this? Do you understand that this is how the Lord intended things to be? That a color-coded map means the train should be that color. Now, some more advanced train nerds would say, but that's incompatible rolling stock, to which I say, shh, shh, shh. So I moved to Montreal to do my doctoral work. And at first I feel at peace. A beautiful color-coded map. So, try to hop on the green line. This fucking blue thing shows up. What do you mean this is a green line train, Montreal? This is not how you make a green line train. I thought to myself, you know what? Montreal hasn't always been the island in Canada with the best public transit. For most of Canadian history, the island in Canada with the best passenger rail service was actually Prince Edward Island. Significant train coverage. They had special narrow gauge trains, a little bit smaller, just cute little trains for a cute little province. And in the 1980s, they ripped up all of their train lines. And now everybody in Prince Edward Island is so confused about there being too many cars. But here's the real problem. Anytime somebody makes an adaptation of Anne of Green Gables, the critical opening scene of Anne of Green Gables is that little orphan Anne is dropped off alone at the Bright River train station. And then Matthew comes and picks her up. And every time you've seen that on television or in the movies, it's filmed in fucking Ontario. With a fat gauge wrong train. You might think something else. This is not persuading me that autistic people are not all weirdly obsessed with trains. I promise you, I don't really care that much about trains. My autistic special interest isn't trains. It's Anne of Green Gables and Little Women. And that's why I'm so passionate. And I hear the critiques. These are books about little girls. No, their entire series, and in both books, series, the protagonist is in her 50s by the time the books are over. Okay? So it's teenage until the 50s for both Anne and Jo in Little Women. Jo is short for Josephine, but she just goes by Jo. In the 1860s, but we'll get to that. If you think that these are little girl books, there's one of two possibilities, and you can do both. You're either a sexist pig, or you're bad at reading. But also, by the way, can we just stop underestimating how important teenage girls are? Yeah. Teenage girls are going to change the world. Mary, Mother of God, the world depends upon teenage girls. That's not blasphemy, that's a theological point. Look, I grew up in Massachusetts, but I spent my childhood summers in New Brunswick. And when I was 11, I was put into foster care because my mother had just died. So are you seriously going to tell me? I mean, so help me God, if one more rich little homeschooled Baptist girl in North Carolina thinks that I can't relate to Anne as a literally orphaned 11-year-old in the Canadian Maritimes, or I can't relate to Jo as an obsessively nerdy writing kid outside of Boston, because Anne and Jo didn't have penises. Anne and Jo didn't have corporeal form, they're fiction. This idea that you can only relate to somebody if they have one specific thing in common with you is essentialism. Essentialism is when you do that thing of knowing literally one fact about somebody, and then you say, I know everything I need to know. I've literally had on TikToks, I saw what books were behind you, and I know everything I need to know. I have more bookshelves, you judgmental a-hole. You don't know everything you need to know. And so the idea like, well, Anne and Jo are girls, and that's the only thing that matters. Therefore, the fact that you're literally an 11-year-old orphan in the Canadian Maritimes, you can't possibly relate to Anne. Or now I'm a pastor. Did you know that the dad in Little Women, Dr. March, not a physician, army chaplain, pastor, liberal pastor from Massachusetts. Oh, I can't possibly relate. Bullshit. Now, we do this with gender, we do it with immigration status, we do it with first language, we do it with religion. Essentialism. When we forget the critical, important thing, may I remind you, people can be more than one thing. People can be more than one thing. My heroine, my hero, St. Lucy Maud Montgomery of Cavendish, Prince Edward Island, the author of the Anne of Green Gables series, often was portrayed in her own time and is still remembered as this meek little school teacher married to a pastor who wasn't a complicated human. She wrote the best portrayals of autism, of CPTSD, of depression, of questioning gender and sexuality I have ever seen in her character studies, despite not having any of the vocabulary. Because even though the words are all new, the lived experiences are not. Also, she wrote exactly when the word queer had a double meaning, so she had plausible deniability. And she wrote a lot about two girls holding hands under the starlight having queer ecstasies. Oh no, I just meant it was silly. Lucy Maud Montgomery wrote Anne of Green Gables, but she also wrote, I've experienced occasions when it was a relief to do considerable banging. Lucy Maud Montgomery wrote that. Look, before I was the hospital autism whisperer, or a man with an unusual knowledge of Anne of Green Gables and Little Women, there were other things that the autistic label helped me make sense of. Because autism isn't just vibes. It's not just somebody being a weirdo. I mean, a lot of weirdos are autistic, but it's not synonymous. There are physiological elements to it as well. And also, by the way, those of you without autism, you're not like the heroes of communication skills you think you are. I do marital counseling for neurotypical people, and you're just so busy presuming you understood each other, you never communicate anything. Non-autistic people invented the entire genre of rom-com based on what would happen if nobody asked a follow-up question 5 minutes into this movie. Fun fact. Sharing fun facts is an autistic love language, sometimes called info-dumping, not my favorite term, but I didn't make it up. It's a way to show shared interests. When I was being trained in ministry and chaplaincy, I was told explicitly, ever talking about yourself is selfish and not to do it. That is absolute crap if you're trying to talk to an autistic kid. They will not tell you a thing about themselves until you show the mutual vulnerability to say something about yourself. And if you're not willing to listen to 45 minutes about horse breeds, you don't get to know how they feel about chemo. What helped convince me that autism wasn't just a vibe, but actually a physiological thing, was once I learned about sensory processing disorder, which is, for autistic people, everything is louder, brighter, and itchier than it is for the rest of you. So I'd like to introduce you to my two mortal enemies in this world. The wooden number 2 pencil and men's board shorts. When I touch wooden pencils, I get goosebumps all over my body, my teeth hurt, and I start to violently shake. This makes taking standardized tests in elementary school extremely difficult. I failed 7th grade geography class because we were graded on coloring in a world map with colored pencils. And because in 1990s Massachusetts we were graded on conformity rather than competence, no, you could not use markers, no, you could not use crayons. The assignment was to use colored pencils. So I failed geography class. Then I became the Massachusetts Commonwealth champion in the National Geographic Geography Bee. And my school pulled me to the principal's office as if I was the problem. How are you failing geography when you are the best in Massachusetts at geography facts? And I just thought, even as a kid in 7th grade, how am I failing geography when I am the best in Massachusetts at geography facts? But autistic kids get judged on conformity rather than competence all the time. Catch yourself when you do that. Are you judging somebody's competence or conformity? Because all I needed was the permission to use a plastic pencil. And when I was a kid, that was just straight up forbidden. You don't get to be different. Because you get goosebumps when you touch wooden pencils, that's bullshit. Turns out it's not bullshit. It's absolutely real. Now, the other thing is board shorts. Oh my God. So you take a plastic sandpaper blend, and then you turn them into like clown pants that you cut off right at the knees where they can swish on your kneecaps as you walk. And then when they get wet, one comes up to here, but one stays down to here. And then for comfort, you line it with a mesh lining of little knives that stab you in the genitals. These are designed for performing latently homophobic shame of the male body, not for swimming. They're not designed for swimming. I grew up near the ocean, and I never went swimming till I discovered Speedos. Not because I'm gay, not because I think I look good, although just join your community pool and then you'll feel very good about your body. I belonged to the University of Montréal gym for a while. That was depressing. Joined the downtown YMCA, never felt sexier. You just need to know where you fit. The thing I can't put on a slide, but you've already figured out, is I kind of talk funny. I mostly mean the Boston accent. I've always been told I talk wrong. It took me 8 years of speech therapy twice a week throughout elementary school and into middle school to learn how to form my mouth and where to put my mouth and my tongue and how to pass the air just to make the basic vowels and consonants of both of my native languages. None of it was intuitive. None of it was easy for me. But once I got through all of that, I was able to learn other languages, other accents, other dialects, because none of it was intuitive to me. So when a speech coach said, well, you need to change your oral posture, I knew what that meant. I knew how to do it. Now, to go through 8 years of speech therapy to end up bilingual with a Boston accent in English and an Acadian accent in French, both of which get treated as speech impediments when you drive more than 3 hours away from where you grew up. A little depressing, but here we are. I tried being normal, so when I was 8, I spent summers in New Brunswick, and I quickly discovered that when I was hanging out with English-speaking kids in New Brunswick, the only thing they wanted to talk to me was about my silly Boston accent, which I think is really audacious coming from an 8-year-old who says, oh, hey, how you doing there, bud? But whatever. So I was like, I need to learn how to talk to these kids from New Brunswick so that they don't only talk to me about my Boston accent. So what I did what any reasonable 8-year-old would do, I locked myself in the house and I watched nothing but CBC News for weeks to emulate the most perfect Canadian accent I could find. So naturally, I tried to learn how to speak like Peter Mansford from CBC News. And do you know what is more disconcerting to 8-year-olds in New Brunswick than a kid with a Boston accent? It is an 8-year-old who speaks in the cadence of Peter Mansford from CBC News. Hello, Kimmy. I understand your Uncle Gord is still in hospital. Is his recovery going according to schedule? But this actually happens with autistic kids a lot. We were told we're doing something wrong, so we learn how to do it right, and then we're made fun if we're doing it too right. We get accused of plagiarism because we actually use the vocab words we studied in class in our papers. We're wrong for needing speech therapy, but then if we emulate Canada's most well-spoken man, that's not okay either, because 8-year-olds should not speak like Peter Mansbridge. Look, I learned how to speak in a generic Canadian accent, much like the former Prime Minister. If you don't believe me, just watch me. The thing is, am I faking a Boston accent? Am I faking a Canadian accent? I'm faking normalcy. I go every day trying to figure out how do I move my mouth, how do I push the air through my mouth, how do I speak so that nobody tells me I'm speaking funny? How do I dress in a way that does not physically hurt me with nobody thinking I'm dressed funny? And I fail at it constantly. In the autistic community, we call this masking. The constant effort we put to seem normal, and generally do not pull off very well. The really disappointing thing is to go through 8 years of speech therapy to end up bilingual, only to discover that most people ignore the words you actually say and just interpret you based on vibes. Oh, I was reading between the lines. There's nothing between the lines. I chose my words carefully. No. I said what I said. And Jesus is on my side here. He says, let your yes be yes. All right, sorry about that tangent. Remember Bible story. Adam and Eve. Don't be offended that they're naked, be offended that they're white. Public domain religious art hasn't caught up with humanity, all coming from Africa. There are a few key things in the creation story that are important to me, and it's not scientific fact, it's just how people understood creation. God created things and then it was called good. God created land and it was good. God created plants and it was good. God created animals and it was good. God created men and it was good. God created women and it was very good. That's God's words, it's not mine. You're good. Your bodies are good. You don't need to be ashamed of who you are. You don't need to be ashamed of your body. You don't need to be ashamed of your brain. You don't need to be ashamed all the time. You are good. Another thing is things are created in pairs of opposites. Light and day. Land and sea. That's a poetic device. It's called merismus. Every time in the Hebrew Bible you hear those two opposites, it poetically means the whole spectrum. Right? God created night and day. God created sunrises and sunsets. God created land and sea. God created swamps. And you know who literally believes merismus means the entire spectrum? Every fundamentalist who believes in literal creation. Until it comes to God created them male and female, and then suddenly they go, no! No spectrums! And I know it's spectra, but they don't usually. No spectrums! Adam was created non-binary and then became a man. The negativity about human body is heretical blasphemy to me. You are good. People can be more than one thing. People can be more than one thing. Like half Bostonian and half Peter Mansbridge. But we like people to be just one thing, and we get mad at them. And we're always trying to figure out, well, are you this thing because of this part of your identity or this part of your identity? And I had a lot of quirks about myself as I was growing up that people attributed to other things about me. Oh, you talk like that, therefore you're this. You look like that, therefore you're this. And so I did what any normal kid facing bullying and criticism would do. I made a color-coded Venn diagram to figure it out. Here are the 3 things I'm accused of being most often in my life. The bullies in Boston, and by the way, the bullies were mostly the teachers, not the kids. The bullies in Boston could not figure out which of these 3 things was behind my quirky behaviors. Like, where does musical theater fit in? Where does speaking French fit in? I know, in Quebec, you're like, it just means you're francophone. It's gay in Boston. It's just not gay. Where does having all female friends fit in? Where does having a funny speaking cadence fit in? All I know is that right in the middle is Speedos. Perfectly fits into all 3. And here's the thing, you can't love any marginalized minority without loving all marginalized minorities. This is not a chart of all marginalized minorities. There are clearly more marginalized people than me. These are just the ones that I'm presumed to be among. And I say presumed, I'm not actually all of them. But there's a huge overlap between the LGBTQ community and the autistic community, and we don't quite know why. But I've heard some horrifically transphobic and homophobic theories, so I'd like to share some inclusive theories. One is, what if we're not? What if, as autistic people who don't conform to social norms, we're just statistically more likely to come out than everybody else? I think that's a possibility. I think a lot of the sensory issues I have means that I have performed my life in a way that people say isn't what a real man does. And so I can understand how people who have been told as much as I have been told that I'm not a real man might one day grow up and say, okay, challenge accepted. And I also know the sensory experience, that often we autistic people don't dress according to gender norms because of the sensory issues. We either want to get all of our body hair off of our body, or we never want to shave our body hair ever. And whichever way you fall, if it doesn't land the way that society has decided gender norms go on that, you're going to be asked, are you non-binary, are you trans? Also, the physical sensation of your own body touching your own body is repulsive. And this leads to a lot of autistic men in Speedos and autistic women in chest binders. It just does. Because that feeling of my body dangling, touching my body is, ugh. And I know that there's more to people's identity than these things. I'm just saying, if you keep telling somebody that they're not fitting in, how dare you be mean to them when they say, okay, then I'm putting on the label that you've told me to put on. I mean, here's the thing about labels. Any one label, if you stop there, is essentialism. But if you add labels enough, and you create a big enough Venn diagram, you start to see somebody's complicated, multifaceted identity. Sometimes people will tell you, ooh, TMI, you've told me too much information. That's fine, people can have their boundaries, but there's something important about TMI. It's bullshit in any loving relationship. When somebody says that's too much information, they're saying that is the limit of how much I can love you. I am no longer comfortable knowing more about you. You have now become too much. You've become too complicated, too nuanced, too difficult, gross, TMI. And again, they're allowed to have that boundary, but you are allowed to recognize that boundary as what it is, the limit of love. And for me, ministry is about making people feel comfortable to drop all the boundaries and all the pretense and share everything. Jesus made people comfortable to share who they were and to be their flawed selves. And he didn't do it, by the way, by being professional and well-behaved. We know facts about Jesus that we would be deeply concerned if people shared at a party about themselves. We know about Jesus' mom's sex life. By tradition, she was a virgin. We know he's circumcised. We know he loved wine. And we know he was a convicted criminal. If somebody walked into a party and said, let me tell you about my mom's sex life, my penis, how much I love alcohol, and my criminal record, you might be tempted to say, TMI! But I'm called to emulate and follow somebody about whom I know all of those things, even though I'm maximally 25% like him. There is a term that we often use in religion for clergy, in persona Christi. It's Latin for representing the person of Jesus Christ. To me, that means showing that we are complicated people. It doesn't mean being demographically like Jesus in every way. And by the way, in persona Christi is some Christians' excuse for why women can't be priests. Yeah, Jesus was a man. He was also Aramaic speaking, Middle Eastern. You're being selective about which demographic you're choosing there. I don't buy it. But here's the thing. Our job as people trying to emulate Jesus, however you define yourself religiously, is just to love other people so that people are safe to be weirdos with you. I'm not cool. I make it safe to not be cool. I'm not the kind of youth pastor who's like, hello, my fellow kids, here's my skateboard. I'm, hello, my fellow dorks, you're safe to be a dork. You don't have to be cool here. I understand the harm religion has caused people in their lives, but here's the thing. When I was a weird, little, undiagnosed autistic teenager, my public school teachers in liberal blue state Massachusetts made my life a living hell. And my conservative Mormon youth group leaders understood it was their God-given job to love that little weirdo, and they did. And because of that, even though I'm no longer Mormon, I understand that in most communities across the United States and Canada today, the only organization that will reach out to kids at no cost to the family is not theater clubs or sports teams, it is churches. So I might as well make them LGBTQ affirming and give free pizza to the weirdos. And that is what I've dedicated my life to. But I am not here to convince you to go to church or work for a church. I want to convince you to make your life about making weirdos have a safe place to be loved. I happen to do that in church. But doing it in church is not the call. Doing it is the call. Can you love the weirdos? Can you make people safe to be their full, unapologetic selves in your presence? That's what I think Jesus is asking us to do. The whole job is to love other people. My job is to love other people. And some of you goddamn sinners are really hard to love, by the way. But so am I. I have found that it's not hardest to love people who are worse off than me. I have the biggest struggle loving people who I think have a better life than me. And as a single 40-something, I am so sick of weddings. Ugh. Unless it's a wedding of two autistic lesbians, because they have the best communication and color-coded charts of anybody. Thrilled to do those weddings. But otherwise, have you ever had your own unrequited crush looking the most radiant she's ever looked in her life, walk up to the aisle to you and then pivot to some other guy so you can pronounce them married to each other? Don't recommend it. But you know why I'm willing to do that? Because I actually love my friend's happiness and agency more than I love my own self-pity. But seriously, Barry, it's not by much. Also gets me out of buying a wedding present, because doing the service is the present. Autistic life is so full of these paradoxes, though, where we're treated like geniuses and idiots, hopeless or savants, failing grade 7 geography and being state champion of the geography bee. I'm also a high school dropout with 3 Ivy League degrees. I have been called stupid and brilliant, and nothing about me changed. High school was judged on conformity, and I failed. College was judged on competence, and I thrived. But I went through 8 years of speech therapy, and now I make my living as a public speaker in multiple languages. I know a lot of autistic people who actually make careers of the thing that they were naturally worst at. Do you know how many clumsy autistic girls become professional ballerinas? It's shocking. Because we overcompensate. We skip being medium. We're not good at being medium. You know, I see that a lot of allegedly normal people always pretend that they're medium at everything. They'll never admit to being good at something or bad at something. It's the way that everybody in Canada says they're middle class. when fuck no you're not, right? But we all have to pretend to be medium. And autistic people, we get in trouble because we're just so flippin' honest. I got, in trouble on a date once where she's like, what, do you think you're smarter than most people? And I said, yes. I have 3 Ivy League degrees. Harvard and Yale said I was smarter than most people. But at the same time, I'll say to my friends, I'm not very attractive. And they'll go, oh, no, don't be so down on yourself. I'm like, are you going to make out with me? No. Okay, so. No, I'm not. I didn't decide I'm smart. I didn't decide I'm unattractive. I'm just very aware of the feedback that I've gotten. But everybody's supposed to be like, I'm medium smart, I'm medium attractive. Come on. We know better. I was raised to believe that success in life was lifelong heterosexual marriage. And that's not happened for me yet, so I've had to find a new way to be happy. And I know that you've all been taught something is your family or your culture's measure of true success, and thanks be to God if it's working out for you, but what do you do if it doesn't work out for you? Whatever you were told is the measure of success. What you do is you love. You go into the world and you love. Not being in a romantic relationship is the same principle as being in one. You love with hope but no expectation. If you think emulating Jesus and trying to be like Jesus is going to end up with everybody appreciating you, you didn't read the Jesus story. You think I'm going to be kind and generous and open-minded, and that's going to lead to the perfect Friday night where I'm naked and getting nailed. Well, one way or another. Look, we love others, and we love others whether or not they love us back. It's that simple. Some of you are going to get laid later tonight because this is part of a wonderful date night, and for my contribution, you're welcome. Some of you aren't going to have sex ever or ever again. For you, solidarity. But wherever you fall on that, I need you to know something about what makes you weird, what makes you self-conscious, what makes you judge yourself. It is so fucking hot to the right person. The thing you hate about yourself, that you're embarrassed about yourself, with the right person is safe and affirmed. Little Women is the story of Meg, the actress, Joe, the protagonist and writer, Amy, the painter, and Beth, the musician. And they have a hot neighbor next door, Laurie. And he's a rich kid. He goes to Harvard. He's a talented musician. He's half Italian. He sounds like he looks like Timothée Chalamet. And a lot of people read Little Women and think Joe, the protagonist, should end up with Laurie, and yet Joe is a girl, Laurie is a boy. They think that Joe should end up with Laurie, and it's fine if you think that, but if you are a Little Women fan who thinks that, I need you to take a deep breath and understand something about yourself. You're not Joe, you're Amy. And come to peace with that. You're an Amy. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, 2 important facts about Little Women that derive from one fact. It takes place in Concord, Massachusetts. This is important because, first of all, contrary to all movie versions, they don't call their mother Marmee. It takes place in Concord, Massachusetts. She's Mommy. Mommy. Second fact. There's no reason to learn German in 1860s Concord, Massachusetts. Why is this important? Because Joe marries a German teacher. Why does Joe need to take German lessons? She doesn't. The most romantic scene in all of literature is in Little Women. Fritz, the German teacher, comes to Joe's house in the rain before it was a cliche. This is how we get the cliche. And he says to her, I have nothing to offer you but these empty hands. And Joe says the single smoothest thing any woman has ever said. She puts her hands in his and says, not empty now. If you are not swooning, go study painting in Europe with your fuckboy. Like Amy. But why is Joe so in love with Fritz? None of the movie versions show really why. So there's one day she's taking a German lesson and she's bad at the grammar, she's getting flustered and she's embarrassed. And the only reason she wants to be good at German is so that the cute German teacher thinks that she's super smart. And he gets so flustered with her being flustered that he takes the grammar book and he throws it in the corner on the floor and he storms out of the room. And she thinks, I have ruined it. This man will never like me. I'm a stupid American. He walks back in calmly, holding a book of German fairy tales. And he says, let's do something more fun. I've put that grammar book in timeout because it has upset my Joe. He put the grammar book in timeout. He put the grammar book in. If that's not the hottest thing you have ever heard, you are Amy, not Joe. Meanwhile, on Prince Edward Island, actually about 40 years later, on Prince Edward Island, Gilbert Blythe, as an adult man, says, when a fellow has a home and a dear little red-haired wife in it, what more need he ask of life? Gilbert meets Anne when they are both tweens, and he pulls on her pigtails and calls her Carrots. Not a great move for a tween, but he is a tween boy, and he apologizes on the same page. But here's the thing. Carrots is not an insult. The only reason Anne thinks carrots is an insult is because the only person ever in the entire multi-decade relationship between Anne and Gilbert who thinks red hair is ugly is only ever Anne. Gilbert unrelentingly loves carrots. Gilbert spends decades obsessed with carrots. He loves red hair. He has 7 children with Anne. He enjoys her company. And their 7th child they name Bertha Marilla Blythe, or Rilla for short. Like my dog, I'm sure that's a coincidence. Nobody with an autistic special interest has coincidences. The human Rilla is described in the books as a wee bit spoiled, but everyone agrees Rilla is a very good girl. There's also something remarkable about Rilla. She's the protagonist of the last book in the series, Rilla of Ingleside. She is portrayed in a book published in the early 1920s as special needs. She has a lisp. She struggles with her speech. She still, in her young adult life, has never recovered from having a lisp. Every time she tries to say yes, it comes out as yes, and she turns red, and she gets flustered, and she runs away embarrassed. And she's also portrayed as the hot girl. Special needs and the hot girl. In 1920s young adult literature. Amazing. But Rilla is self-conscious of her lisp. Until the last scene of the entire Anne of Green Gables series. At the end of World War I, her fiancé returns from the war, knocks on the door and says, "Is that you, Rilla, my Rilla?" And in the safety and comfort of the one man with whom she feels most safe in the world, she says, yes. Y-E-T-H, yes. Be the person with whom people are safe. To have red hair, to have a lisp, to struggle with German. Adam and Eve are not the perfect biblical couple for me because it is one man and one woman, but actually because the Bible describes them as naked and unashamed. They are safe with one another. If you are in a relationship with somebody who does not like your naked body, or who can't handle you just casually confiding that dairy products give you explosive diarrhea, if they think who you are is TMI, is too much, dump them. Sorry to all of those of you who thought you were having sex tonight if I just undermined it. Dump them. Find the people with whom you are safe and be the person with whom people are safe. And I don't know if it will lead to romance, but it will lead to love. Making people safe to be themselves will always lead to love. I've decided that if I were to ever try a dating app again, I would make a profile designed to repel people and save myself the time. Lead with my weird in order to weed out the weak. Who would want to be with a pastor? I mean, seriously, who would want to be with somebody who spends their life trying to find the precise, repetitive ways to please an ineffable being? That sounds like a terrible partner. Who could handle somebody autistic, who's overwhelmed by wooden pencils and board shorts and loud lights? Or whose greatest fear is frickin' small talk? I don't want to talk to you about the weather. Can we just talk about your impending death like normal people? Or who like loves his dog so much he'd literally die without her. Or he's just rapidly aging, as we all are, towards our inevitable deaths. Thinks board shorts hurt. Look, here's why I know I'm worthwhile. It doesn't come naturally to me. But I know I'm worthwhile because I know you're worthwhile. When you love others, you actually then in turn learn to love yourself. And when you love yourself, you are empowered to love others. It is a cycle. Love the weirdos, and then you can learn to love the weird within yourself. Here's the thing. I need my Bible every day. Believing in the Bible isn't a stretch for me, because I don't take it literally. I take it as the traditions I've inherited that help me see the world. And believing in a loving God is easy for me, because I have felt love when no human is loving me. My faith is not that remarkable in God. The thing that shows that I have faith against all evidence is I have condoms in my backpack. Because I haven't needed those, and what I'm asking you really is, what are your condoms of hope? What is the thing that you can carry with you that shows I am ready for my life to go better? I am ready for things to be better. I am ready to love and be loved. I have no evidence I'll ever need them, but I'm ready. What's your condom of hope? What do you need to carry around in your life to show that you are ready to love and be loved? It's different for all of us. So when we're done here, I don't know, we're all going to go about our social lives, and maybe I'm going to I'm going to go to a bar. And I'm going to be dressed like somebody who took a vow of celibacy and have to explain, actually in 1517, Martin Luther and Katie info dumping as flirtation. Hasn't worked yet, but I don't learn. But maybe, and then I'm going to have a service dog with me. That she's adorable, but then people will also be like, something's wrong with that guy. And they won't know what. But maybe this time somebody beautiful is going to walk up to me and say, what's your dog's name? And I'll say, Rilla. And maybe she'll say, like Rilla Blythe from Rilla of Ingleside by Alan Montgomery? And I'll just look at her and say, oh my God, yes. Thank you so much.